Hello, and welcome to Why Responsibly, the 14th of 14 live sessions on both YouTube and Facebook that are part of the digital 2021 Wyoming Outdoor Expo, brought to you by the Wyoming Game and Fish Department and many partners. Today, we're excited to introduce you to partners around the state invested in the mindful stewardship of the land we all call home. To get started, please introduce yourself in the comments and let us know where you call home. And while you're doing that, I'd like to introduce you to Lauren Seidl with the Wyoming Office of Tourism. Lauren, thanks for being here.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you for having me. Thank you, sorry, go ahead.
Go for it.
Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. We're really excited to get into an important conversation with some outdoor experts from across the state. But before we introduce you to those experts, I just wanted to really quickly touch on a new initiative that the Wyoming Office of Tourism is launching this summer. You might have already seen, or if not, I'm sure you'll see more this upcoming summer of our Why Responsibly initiative. And it's really our office's way of educating visitors and residents as they travel across the state to make sure that they're doing so mindfully and really being respectful of our natural spaces, whether they're out camping or hiking or enjoying all of the different outdoor things that Wyoming has to offer. With our wildlife, as you all know, Wyoming has so much wildlife and it is all very wild. So making sure that people are keeping their distance, not feeding wildlife, just really being respectful of that. And then also our communities, so being responsible travelers within our communities and really trying to support local businesses, as well as really adhere to any health guidelines that might still be in place in different communities. And that big red Why Responsibly badge that you can all see on your screen right now, that will actually be available as a sticker in welcome centers across the state this summer. And it will also be available as more of a high quality vinyl type of a sticker that you could use to patch puffy jackets or other gear at different game and fish offices, national forest offices throughout the state, our state parks, and other locations like that. So I also just really wanted to tell you about a few different resources that you guys can find. If you go to our website, travelwyoming.com/whyresponsibly, you can find different responsible recreation tips. We also have a Know Before You Go page that gives more details on just camping, recreating in national and state parks, fire safety, different tips like that. And then we also have a really cool new interactive map that we worked on with the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation. And you can go there to really look and find different places to camp, hike, mountain bike, just really any sort of outdoor recreation opportunities you can find on that map. So now we can dive into our panel and get to our questions. I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves and who they're with and just a little bit about their background. So Dave, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. My name's Dave Whittekiend. I'm the forest supervisor of the Wasatch National Forest. We're located in South Jordan, Utah, but we've got a number of acres that are actually in Wyoming near Evanston and Mountain View. And right now I'm on a temporary assignment as the National Director for the Forest Service, Recreation, Heritage, and Volunteer Resources. So I can speak from a national point of view as well as what's going on the Wasatch.
Perfect. Justin, I know you're also with the National Forest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Justin Robinson. I am the district ranger on the Evanston and Mountain View Ranger District. I work for the Forest Service. In my prior work, I've only been on this job about a month, but in my prior work, I was a fisheries biologist, also with the Wasatch Cache. So I've got a very close tie to recreation throughout my career and recreating responsibly. So I'm excited for today. Thanks.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Josh, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Metten. I'm a naturalist with Jackson Hole Eco Tour Ventures. We're a wildlife tour operator in Based in Jackson, we operate in Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks 365 days a year, doing wildlife tours, national park tours, and ski and snowshoe as well.
Perfect. And Landon and Elise?
Yeah, I'm Landon Blanchard.
I'm Elise Farina.
And we own Wyoming Rivers Cooperative, which is kind of a small, customized, conservation-focused, education-focused drafting and backpacking outfitter. We do trips kind of all around the state on various rivers, from the Shoshone up north, the Sweetwater, Green, Upper Wind River, the South Fork of Shoshone. And we also own, as recently this last month or so, Wyoming River Trips in Cody, Wyoming. So 2 river outfitters, kind of different styles, I guess you would say. But, one being kind of more smaller, customizable trips, and one being more daily driver day trips with families and folks from all over the place.
And I would just add, we have backgrounds in conservation, wildlife conservation, and outdoor education.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for being here. And I'm going to jump into a few questions. But anyone who's tuning in, if you guys happen to have any questions, please jump in and ask them. And also, hello, Jerry from Rock Springs. And hello, Catherine, from Colorado. Awesome. All right. So my first question to you guys is, I know that at the Wyoming Office of Tourism, we really noticed a lot of people have been taking to the outdoors more so even recently than before, due to the pandemic and the outdoors kind of being a safer spot to be. So I'm just curious, from each of your kind of fields and areas of expertise, if you could just describe what you noticed last summer with regard to how people were recreating outdoors, and just kind of touch on why it's important to really follow those responsible recreation guidelines. And Dave, I might throw it to you, just even from a national perspective, to start us off.
Sure. The Forest Service just finished analyzing their numbers from last year, and we estimate that we were up almost 20 million visitors nationally last year across National Forest System lands. And I would say that showed itself across most national forests. Visitation was up quite a bit. A lot of that took place later in the summer. A lot of developed campgrounds throughout the nation were closed early in the pandemic. And once they started to open up, people got out there and filled them up. We know our trails were packed, trailheads were really busy. One of the most interesting points in the national numbers was 75% increase in wilderness visitation. So people were getting out into remote areas, probably a lot of day trips, but may have been learning how to backpack and camp in those areas. So we're also assuming we had a lot of new visitors. When you go up by 20 million visits, you got to assume there were people who had never been out on National Forest System lands. So we saw a big uptick in visitation across the country.
Yeah, that's not surprising. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was just going to chip in from we definitely saw that in the national forests around Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks, and a really busy year up in the national parks as well. It's exciting to see so many people kind of discovering what a lot of us that are already kind of passionate outdoors people already know, is that these wild places that we have, especially in Wyoming, are absolute gems. But it does definitely, the increased number of people creates a lot more challenges and I'm really grateful that we're working on these questions right now of how do we have people exploring these beautiful public lands, but do it in a way that hopefully doesn't diminish the quality of the resource. So, but yeah, very busy, a lot of more people, less experience, but a lot of excitement about being outside in these wild places.
Yeah, and we kind of had I think a little bit of a perspective Sorry, I didn't put you off. This last year, Alicia and I running our backpacking stuff was already in its first year, kind of a obscure time to be started. So we were somewhat from kind of seeing firsthand the volume of people outside recreating on public lands. However, kind of hearing conversations or participating in conversations with my family who owned Wyoming River trips here in Cody before, it seemed like pretty much once things started, it was like full bore, and there wasn't kind of the normal, I guess, kind of bell curve of people kind of slowly building into the summer and then fading out because work schedules and school schedules and everything was so different. So for us, with our backpacking stuff, we didn't necessarily notice as many people out doing the things, but whenever we were between locations traveling, at some point in the summer, it just seemed like there were people everywhere. And people were kind of recreating with some sort of pent up energy that they'd been kind of keeping inside of them. So people were eager to get out and do things. So it felt different last year, just from the perception of more numbers, and hearing Dave mention that kind of backs that up as far as actual data. But also the quality of recreation seemed a bit more of a frenzy, but maybe that was just a perception of ours. So.
Yeah, definitely. And Justin, I'm not sure if you've noticed anything, just even from the Wyoming side of National Forest, kind of in the southwest corner.
Yeah, we certainly did. We have a very high use recreation corridor along a scenic byway. That's Highway 150 that goes from Evanston south. And along that byway, the receipts, the number of people who paid their day use or fees was actually up close to 50%. It's a beautiful drive. There's a lot of opportunities along that byway, but it's an immense increase. And we do know that a lot of those folks were first-time users to the forest. And I think that is just fantastic that something, as horrible as the pandemic could come along, but we got kind of a really neat result out of it. And that was a lot of people trying something that they hadn't done before. And so I like to think about those good benefits. There are a lot of issues that come up with that though as well. A lot of folks that may not have been out on, our public lands much in their life maybe don't know quite as well how to treat that and what the etiquette and the protocols are. And so I'm excited for your campaign to help teach people how to recreate responsibly in the wilds. That sort of increased use takes a lot of patience on the public's part, patience with new users, patience with trailheads having more cars and lack of space and lack of campgrounds. And so any education that we can get out there on just how the public should deal with each other, how they should act, I think is really going to help us all enjoy our public lands more.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm glad that each of you also talked on the positives about this, because it is great to see so many more people out there enjoying our public lands. And it just does take a little bit of reminder sometimes of what that entails to make sure we're doing that in a respectful way. So yeah, we're expecting for this summer to be very similar, with people being really excited to get out there. We've just had a question come in we can jump to really quickly. Jerry's asking if the Forest Service will be increasing patrols because of the increase in visitors. So Dave, I don't know if you have any answers to that.
Well, I wish I had an answer that a whole bunch more funding was going to come down. We haven't seen a concurrent increase in funding. We are going to try to get out as much as possible to monitor folks, to work with people, but we have not been able to hire more temporaries this year. We haven't got a big increase in law enforcement officers or folks who patrol. So we'll be doing the best we can to cover out there, but I wouldn't say we're going to have a whole bunch more people to address these issues. I wish I could say otherwise.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. What Dave said is absolutely true. We are kind of lucky on the Evanston Mountain View District. For the first time, we now have a law enforcement officer. So at least on the UN Wasatch Cache portion in Wyoming, we will see more law enforcement presence. We're also, as a district, prioritizing our interactions and getting out there with the public, and mainly it's for education. So again, most people want to do the right thing, and we appreciate and know that. And so we will really task our local folks. Again, I agree with Dave. I wish we had more, but we will task our staff at the local level to prioritize that and get out there and help educate and answer questions and, head off any disputes if we possibly can. But we will have that as a priority. We anticipate that we're going to see similar numbers to last year, if not an increase. And so it really is a priority to make sure that our using public is as happy as we can help make them.
As long as we're on this topic, I'll jump to the question about just ways that even people who do recreate outdoors more often, or maybe even locals, like if someone were to see someone outdoors, I don't know, like littering or going off trail or just doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing that might be disrespectful or dangerous, what's the best way, what's the best thing to do in that situation? Josh, I don't know if you have any tips to start us out.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think especially as the kind of the busy season, the summer season progresses, we start seeing more things that get really stressful to us. I think the first thing that's important to do is to be patient. A lot of times, if we see something going on that is clearly not right to us, it might be something that to the visitor, especially, they might not realize it's an issue. And there's this technique, actually, it's taught in Leave No Trace, known as authority of the resource. And it's something that I've tried to use as much as possible when I'm encountering kind of either a visitor or other local residents of Wyoming kind of doing things that it would be nice for us to help with letting them know and trying to adjust behavior. And I do think that as people that are fortunate to live in this awesome part of the country and in this state, that we have a responsibility to kind of to help these agencies that are managing public lands with things like this, if it can be done in a safe and respectful manner. And so authority of the resource, basically the idea is that we make the issue about the resource, and we use the authority of the resource to address the issue. Instead of making it about the person being the one that's causing the problem, we kind of try to talk to the individual or the group in a way that makes them look at the situation themselves, and it separates them from being the problem. And it's so, for instance, say you see someone that is getting way too close to an animal, you might try and talk to them about oh, that animal looks a little stressed, or it could be a little dangerous getting that close, and we don't want to, these are great animals, that this is a great moose or bear or whatever that we all want to enjoy getting to experience or observe, but in getting that close to it, it could be endangering that animal, or it could be endangering us or other people, and trying to make it about the animal instead of about the person. And this is something that can be used for whether it's if we have a fire ban, which it's pretty dry here in Wyoming this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens with wildfire and fire conditions later this summer. That's an issue that maybe authority of the resource could come in handy for. So that's something that, there's a lot of information about that online that you can look into if you want to kind of look for ways to actually successfully do that. But that's something that I try and do as much as possible, and not just go straight up and be in someone's face about, oh, you're doing it all wrong, and where they're more likely to be defensive instead of actually look at the situation and maybe come to the conclusion on their own that they should maybe do something different.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Thanks for sharing. It's definitely a way to go about it without being confrontational, or like you said, without kind of starting a fight, and just really focusing on the whole point of why you're even giving that information is to protect the different resources. Landon or Elise, do you have anything else to add to that?
I mean, I would just add, like, well, what Josh is saying is great. Definitely, when you can, helping people separate from the situation so that they can receive information in a non-threatening way. And I would only add, like, if it's a risk management thing, sometimes you have to be direct, and that's really hard. In my past lives of guiding various activities, it's particularly hard when it's something technical that is either endangering you, a group, or other people. But the times where you'd have to speak up, in addition to impacting the environment, if suddenly you have a whole group of people that are stranded somewhere, or someone who's injured, that puts a strain on the infrastructure that's put in place to keep people safe as possible in the backcountry. If suddenly, there's a search team needed, or we're spending money flying in helicopters, that's just not the best use of those resources. But I do think, I guess it's on the same topic, but Landon and I were talking about this earlier, is sometimes it's also helpful to frame it for guests as if they're staying at an Airbnb, a beautiful, pristine place with like gorgeous views, and everything is perfect. And I do that rather than saying you're in your own home, because a lot of people don't live that cleanly in their own homes. But if you don't take care of it, you won't be invited back. And that's just sometimes a helpful framing for me one-on-one with guests, whether it's, a Forest Service ranger who sees you, other people who are around you, animals and plants, or just the energy of a place, how we interact with the wilderness. It's like beyond us and outside of us, and there are consequences to that. So as much education as we can provide on, like what Josh said, is, they don't know what the right way to behave is. As much education as you can provide to help people understand what the house rules are is helpful, because once they leave that trailhead, there aren't signs anymore when you get to camp, or when you get to the lake, or when you pull over on the side of the river, about what's the right way to behave or the right way to interact.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that way of framing it too, of being a guest in someone else's home. Dave or Justin? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Add to that quickly, I think it's really important that people feel like they have ownership in that place as well, because that creates a feeling of empowerment, and will only help to kind of continue that, I guess, ethos of taking care of a place, or taking care of yourselves or the people you're with whenever you're out recreating or doing your thing. If you feel empowered and have ownership over that, then it typically will continue further than just being told the wrong way to do things, and not really given some sort of way to be involved more deeply.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Dave, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Sure. I think one of the most powerful ways of teaching people is being a mentor or a friend. If you know somebody who's interested in going outdoors, you can teach them the proper techniques. Ideally, you know them. They're going to follow your example. And taking the opportunity to take someone out there, show them the ropes. This is how you set up a camp with minimum impact. This is why you stay on the trail. I think that's a powerful example. And if you run into a situation where somebody is doing damage or violating what you think are proper outdoor ethics, I think, as was said, there are a number of things. If you feel comfortable, you can talk to somebody. If you don't, if there are ways to take pictures, you can document what's going on, and you can turn that back to the whatever land management agency there is, and they may be able to deal with it in some way. We've had a lot of reports of people, say, driving through meadows and tearing them up, and the Forest Service has been able to cite those individuals and get restitution from them on tearing stuff up. So documenting is easy. Everybody carries a phone these days, and you can subtly take pictures and then move on your way and turn those in. But I think certainly, as I said, the most powerful way is if you know people who are interested, by all means, help them out, teach them, show them the ropes, pass the information on that you have, and that sets a powerful example and puts them on the right path. I'd also say the outfitter guides are in a unique position because they may be bringing people out to these areas who've never been there before, and it is exactly like that mentor ability. They can teach them, they can show them, they can provide them all the information all in one area. So those outfitters and those guides are really important in teaching first time or very new outdoor users all the proper ways and the outdoor ethics that they should have.
Yeah, I love that idea of mentorship, even from friends and locals, but also really supporting those outfitters and guides too, because that's what they're out there to do. I feel like we've covered a lot on this, but Justin, I wanted to give you the chance to add anything else that you might have.
These were all great comments and viewpoints. I would just throw in, in the Forest Service, we are a safety culture. No matter what it is, if you don't feel comfortable in a situation, don't say anything. Follow Dave's advice, take pictures, document if you can, call our offices and let us go out there. But please don't escalate a already unfortunate situation and get into a conflict or a confrontation. That's just not worth it. So be safe out there, have fun, and that includes your interactions with other users.
Thank you. Yes, that's another really good point. I'm going to just transition now to talking about preparedness and just what people going outdoors, what they can do to be better prepared to have a safe experience in Wyoming. So I'm going to toss this one over, Landon, to you and Elise to see if you have any thoughts to kick us off.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. There's definitely some technical skills and equipment and all that kind of more mechanical stuff. But I think one thing that kind of stands out to me that's a little bit more abstract is just kind of more of an ego piece. It seems like if you're able to kind of better understand why it is that you want to go out and recreate and what that means for you, it seems like you're able to kind of go out and do those things with kind of better intentions that will lead to better outcomes. Going back to kind of finding yourself seeing someone doing something incorrectly, you're less likely to kind of get to the point of doing something incorrectly or unsafe if you're able to kind of always come back to the idea of ego and why I'm making decisions, especially, kind of in our line of work with the pack rafting stuff. Depending on what trip we're doing, there are trips that require a lot more discussion with our clients about why we're making decisions. And some of those decisions are not very easy to make in the time, especially when it's the end of a long day, and it would be way easier to float a certain section than to pack all of our stuff up and hike around something. But being able to kind of communicate with those people and create an ethos around recognizing why you're making decisions and what your ego is involved in doing in the process will ultimately, I feel, lead to a more sustainable method or career interacting with wild lands and wild places, but it will also kind of provide a better and more complete connection with that place that you're already kind of spending time with anyways, if you're able to get to that place, as opposed to maybe being so focused on the end goal of doing something and what that maybe means about you, being able to be there for the whole experience and kind of check yourself throughout that is, I think, a really important way to kind of be prepared for those situations as they come, all the unpredictable ones.
And then I would just add to, like, once you've figured out, okay, why do I want to get outside? Why do I want to do this? Learning to ask questions. I think some people ask questions immediately all the time and are very curious, but part of planning ahead and being prepared for whatever it is you're about to do or want to do or your goal is to then research the thing. If you're going to a trailhead you've never been to, don't assume it's like the trailheads you've been to. Google it. We have the internet at our fingertips. If you're not comfortable looking up phone numbers or don't even know where to start, like what ranger district is this? Is there a ranger? Is it BLM? Is it Forest Service? What are the rules and regulations specific to this environment? Is it a forest? Is it a high desert? Are you in an alpine zone? Is it a desert? Because all of those places just have different best practices. And unless you ask the question, you won't find the answers and you won't be prepared. And I think one of the interesting things with that, and I'm sure we've all experienced it at some point in our outdoor lives, is you have a great trip, you think everything was amazing, and then 3 years later, now that you have new information, you think back on something you did, and you go, ooh, I can't believe I did that. And so as a way of avoiding those interactions, I think just utilizing the resources we have to do as much research as possible. And some good places to start are, what kind of environment is it? Does somebody manage the land? If so, who? And what are the basic ethics or acceptable best practices for that area? Those three things generally will send you down a path of finding more information, because as you Google that, you're going to find forums where other people asked questions, and it hopefully will spark some curiosity.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you both for those answers. I know they kind of go hand in hand, but definitely the research is so important. And then also checking your ego, because the outdoors, as beautiful as it is, it's also a very wild and rugged place, and it is not forgiving if something goes wrong. So yes, very important points. Thank you so much for those. Josh, did you have anything to add?
No, I think, yeah, what those guys just said is really fits well with, checking your ego out there. I think a lot of us, we go into new places, we don't have, we assume it's similar to what we've experienced before, because that's how the human brain works. We make decisions based on our past history. And so we're fortunate that we have a lot of resources around here in terms of agencies and local chamber of commerces, things like that that are actively putting information out. And I really do think it's especially important in some of the kind of the wildest parts of the country, of the state, where we're, in addition to kind of dealing with just backcountry scenarios, we're also potentially dealing with large carnivores, or dealing with potential for wildfire, or with land in a lease world, dealing with river conditions. It's something that we're constantly trying to figure out how to educate people about these additional risk factors that are bigger than what they might be familiar with back home. And that is one of the things that being people that are potentially more familiar with these areas, that live in these areas, there is an opportunity for us to send, if people have to help answer questions from people. If, again, as they were saying, if it's safe, potentially redirect people if they are making dangerous situations. And then also, I do definitely recommend to visitors, consider guides. That's what Wyoming Rivers does, what Eco Adventures does, what the backcountry outfitters do in this area. Is these are experienced people that can help not only provide a really good experience in the moment, but also do provide some of those skills and those tools. I know that whenever I have a chance to go somewhere new, if I have friends in that area that are experienced with it, I always try and hit them up and and have that extra experience for that. So if you don't know people, use those agencies, those local chambers and things like that for information, and consider guiding services.
Yeah, that's another really great point. And I mean, aside from them just being able to offer their expertise on safety concerns, they also just know where the fish are and where the animals are in the wildlife. So it's really, it'll help really make everyone else's experience that much better. So Justin, I'm not sure if you have anything more. I know preparedness is a huge topic and we couldn't possibly cover everything here, but are there any other kind of basic points of preparedness that people should be aware of before they go out?
I think this has been covered really well. I was just going to point out knowledge is power and be prepared. And I think that the rest of the panel has really spoken to that. And I just offer our district offices up anytime. I mean, these people have decades and decades of combined experience with that very particular piece of land that you may be playing on. And I think that pattern is repeated throughout the state. So, I'll just offer all of our knowledge up. Call us. We're in the phone book. We're on Google too. I don't know if there are even phone books anymore. So yeah, just reach out, find that knowledge, be safe, over prepare, have fun.
I was just going to say, as an anecdote, whenever I'm planning trips personally, I usually don't know what district to call. Sometimes that information is just not obvious. And I've definitely done that. Just called a random Forest Service district ranger's office and said what I'm looking for, and then they can help me out. So definitely take advantage of the resources by just taking a shot in the dark too. They might even say, oh, actually, we don't manage those lands. You need to talk to this person. But those internal directories are a lot of times easier for folks to sort through than the wide swath of information on the internet.
Yes, the internet, as great as it is, can sometimes get a little overwhelming. So sometimes just picking up the phone can be more helpful. Dave, just wanted to give you the chance to speak to anything before moving to the next question.
Well, our national avalanche centers have a saying in a program called "Know Before You Go," and that really is the key. Take the time to do the research, find out where you're going, who manages it, what equipment you might need. The amount of information out there is tremendous, can be overwhelming, but you should feel comfortable about where you're going and what you're going to face. That talks to that ego part on letting go of thinking that you know everything and really working hard to learn and know. And as Justin said, it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared.
Definitely. So just kind of moving on to some more basic kind of, I guess, not necessarily leave no trace, but different basic things that people can do to kind of protect our lands and wildlife. I know that there's a lot of people attending this might already feel like they know quite a bit of just staying on trails, keeping specific distances from wildlife. I'm wondering if you guys have any kind of like hidden gems of things that not everyone might know about, or things that are lesser known that might be important for people to know when they go out and recreate. So Dave, I'll toss it back to you right away to start this one out.
I guess I would circle back to the comments that were made before on reaching out to the whatever land management agency of the land that you're going to. I think one of the biggest things is trying to find a place that not everybody else is in, and they might be able to point you to a less used, lesser known area that may be just as fascinating, just as worthwhile to go to. They usually have, and they may not give out their secret spots, but we don't hold those things too tightly. But reaching out and finding out those areas that you could go to that may already be less impacted, and doing that research, I think is worthwhile. As far as once you're out there, I think being flexible with where you go, being flexible with time of week, even time of day, maybe spending different hours being out and about than everybody else is. I have found that hiking maybe a little later in the afternoon after the parking lots have had the early morning folks, you can get a parking spot and you can hike. You need to be prepared if you're out later. But looking at different times, different days of the week, that might give you a little more flexibility and a different experience than if you're out there when everybody else is trying to get out there and forcing your way through and trying to find a parking spot. And by the time you get to the trail, you may be cranky and tired and sick of people, and being flexible in that really gives you an advantage.
Yeah, that's great advice. And Wyoming has a ton of beautiful outdoor locations besides kind of the bigger heavy hitters of our national parks. So I would definitely encourage people to try to get off the beaten path a little and find some of those more hidden gems, just so that, some of our places that are already a little bit more impacted can get a little relief. Josh, I'll toss it over to you on any lesser known ways to kind of respect the land.
I think I just do go back to, I feel like as kind of experienced outdoors people, if we have an opportunity to help kind of lead by example, and show kind of show others kind of how ways to kind of respect things like that. That could be something like, one of the things that I like to do when I'm out wildlife watching is, and I haven't been doing this over the last year, but as we kind of move out of a pandemic world, is I carry optics with me. And so if you see people if you're traveling in an area and you see something, there's an opportunity to share what you're looking at with others. And I think this is really cool with kids sometimes too, especially if you can set up one thing I do, I have a scope adapter that I'll put on my spotting scope, and then it allows me to look through the phone. And if it's just someone that's not with me, as if I'm guiding professionally or if I'm out in the field by myself, it's an opportunity for me to show someone something from a distance, and they get that up close look at an animal that, in order for them to get that look on their own, they would be putting themselves in a dangerous situation. So from a wildlife watching perspective, or it might provide them with an opportunity to see something like a small songbird that they would otherwise ignore, but now they're looking around and enjoying songbirds and starting to think about, well, I love this place because of these other things that I wasn't previously aware of. And I think that is something that as folks that are more experienced outdoors people, there's any number of things that we each are kind of more specialists at, that we have an opportunity to share with other people, to increase their passion for the outdoors and their ability to recreate in this area and experience this area in a more safe and responsible manner.
Yeah, I love that. Sharing the view. That's incredible. Elise or Landon, I'm not sure if you have anything, either in general or river specific, that people should keep in mind.
I think I would add in general, and it applies to rivers, and kind of goes right on the end of what Josh was saying, is simplify your reason for going outside and your expectations. River specific, if you go into a river trip expecting to hit the biggest waves, hit the gnarliest rapids, do the most extreme thing, and then it rains and snows for 4 days, everyone's cold and miserable, doesn't have the energy, or maybe the runoff was huge and there are log jams everywhere and you have to walk around. If you don't check those expectations, you're not going to enjoy your trip. You're just going to feel disappointed. And I think as that applies more broadly to respecting places and wildlife, one of the things we can do is enjoy them for what they are and the fact that they exist and the fact that we have them, as opposed to all the things we expect to get from them by going there, all the things we expect to see. If not seeing any wildlife, but enjoying an incredible view and 3 hours of silence with people you enjoy being with is something you get, rather than seeing a wolf, a coyote, an eagle, a bear. You know, you're gonna always enjoy being outside. If you're disappointed because you didn't get the exact thing you went for, I would say maybe change the thing you're going out there for. But I think of that as a way of respecting places and wildlife specifically.
Yeah, and I would just kind of like maybe spin off that, but also spin off of what Dave was saying earlier with just kind of planning, both from a kind of private user and also, you know, who's going to go out and recreate on their own, versus someone who is looking for kind of more of a guided, outfitted sort of experience. Either spend time planning that trip for yourself, or spend time looking around at different outfitters that are in that area and doing that thing. I think generally speaking, it's usually pretty easy to find outfitters that, you know, appear to adhere to kind of a higher level of kind of respect for our natural resources, and cater their trips to that, versus other outfitters that might be kind of taking more of that, kind of where Elise was going with that, expecting to get something out of this. And as a outfitter, I just need more numbers to get down the river and pay my bills at the end of the season. That's all it's going to be. There is a time and a place for making money, but yeah, I think spending time as an individual looking into a guided adventure, a guided trip, it's worth kind of comparing and contrasting, calling around, asking people kind of what the insight is on how that outfitter operates, and what type of trip you're going to get out of that, because I think that'll help make your experience better, and you'll probably you'll have more kind of you'll have more education and more opportunity to come out of an experience like that, I think, than one that is just done as kind of a more of a high volume commute down a river, or a high volume commute into the mountains to do something, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point of really looking around for the best fit for you for different guides and outfitters. And also, Elise, love that of just having the right mindset, because the outdoors is very unpredictable. Justin, did you have any last tips to add?
You know, I think that I would just recommend that everybody be mindful. You know, I think that we all have pretty good compasses internally. And if we just slow down and really think about the decisions we're making in the wild, if we're not in a hurry, if we're not rushing, and we just think, we'll make the right choices. Should I go here, or should I walk through there? And if you take time and think about every choice you're making, spend a little bit, I think you'll make the right choices, and just in general have a better experience too. Slow down and enjoy it. Do the right things.
Yeah, thank you. Those are all great points. We're running toward the end of our session, so I'll just toss out one more question, and that is, if you guys have any specific ways or organizations that people could get involved with to really play a bigger part in helping kind of protect the outdoors in our communities. Josh, I can toss it over to you to start.
Sure. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think kind of in addition to kind of what we can do as individuals, we're really fortunate to have a lot of hardworking folks trying to kind of look at the big picture issue of conserving the natural resources around that, whether that's the kind of folks that we have along with us at the agencies that are charged with managing these resources. And one of the things that as a company, Ecosphere Ventures is really proud to launch as part of we're one of the member organizations of is this initiative we're calling Wildlife Tourism for Tomorrow. As a wildlife tour operator, we really benefit from the wildlife of Wyoming and the public lands in Wyoming. And so we've created this initiative to start raising money for for the organizations and the people that are working hard to keep these animals, the wildlife around us around. So Wildlife Tourism for Tomorrow is a kind of voluntary program that encourages businesses in Wyoming to contribute to the fund, which goes to a organization known as the Wildlife Fund that funds conservation projects across the state. So we're really proud to be one of the kind of initial members of that and be working across the state, inviting folks to join in and do that. And we're talking about conservation projects like highway funding, helping to fund wildlife crossings on our highways so that fewer people are hitting wildlife, and we're protecting wildlife and people, improving aquatic habitat, reducing and mitigating fencing impacts on wildlife, and kind of all sorts of other really important wildlife conservation issues in the state. So the website for that is wildlifetourismfortomorrow.org. And if you're interested in learning more, we'd love to see folks join in.
Yeah, that sounds like a great organization to get involved with. Dave, I'm not sure if the National Forest has volunteer opportunities or just any other ways that people could get involved.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of volunteer opportunities. All you need to do is reach out to your local district office or I think any other land management agency, but we're very proud of our volunteer programs. And on the Uinta Wasatch Cache, actually, that forest has had the largest volunteer program in the entire National Forest system over the years. The most volunteers, hours donated. So that's an outstanding way. To me, when people donate their time, when they take their valuable time, that's one of the highest commitments they can make to any given cause. And if people are interested in learning more about management of national forests, learning more about what it takes to provide the resources that we do, and certainly learning from our employees, I absolutely recommend taking the opportunity to volunteer and contact any agency, and I'm sure they'll welcome you.
Perfect. Justin, did you have anything to expand on kind of the types of volunteer opportunities or what you're seeing in your area?
We love having volunteers. I think it's one of the best ways to reach the public. Come out, hang out with our staff, pick their brains for a whole day, do some good work in the most beautiful places there are. And we have lots of opportunities. I've got at least 3 different projects. It isn't all just cleaning trash, although that's an important project too, but we're doing other things, working around some of our historic buildings. We build a lot of fence. There are a lot of different projects we do, and we really welcome all abilities and ages. It's great when the kids come out, they have so much fun. We may not get a ton of work out of them, but hey, when they come back and work for us in 20 years, it's paid off. And I can't say enough good about the volunteer programs, and I enjoy those days. It tends to be on weekends, and so we give up our weekends so that we can work. But the people that come out are so into it. It's well worth it, and the work that we get done is very, very important. As short-staffed as we are, it makes a big difference. It doesn't just feel good; it's actually producing a product that we can all be proud of. So thanks to everybody who has volunteered, and if you want a program, call me. I'm in Evanston.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's great to hear. I'll throw it over to you, Elise and Landon, to kind of wrap this up.
I was just going to less volunteer programs and more to your first question about resources. From a water perspective, there are several national organizations you can get in touch with just to understand what's happening in watersheds. American Rivers is a really good resource. Locally, Wyoming has, and most states do, water conservation districts. Find out which ones you're in, which one the rivers you care about are in, just from an education standpoint. Try to understand what the issues are, because a lot of times, just living life in a town, we have our perspective of what the issue is. But our resources have many users. Water specifically has many users. And everybody has their own interests. And I would say go to public meetings. Go to public meetings about water. Go to ag board meetings. Go to ditch board meetings. Go to all the meetings you can without the intent to state your opinion, but instead to glean information. And then eventually, when you feel like you have a big enough picture, you can start advocating for things, or better yet, be a connector. I've been in a lot of meetings where people are there just to state their interest over and over again, no matter what, and are not listening. And I think as far as becoming a resource, if you can become a person that has an understanding of all the different interests, then you can be a connector for your community and for decision makers. So some good resources are your local organizations that are working for conservation in different areas. American Rivers nationally, but then also work to become a resource, work to grow your own understanding so that more people can be educated.
And just to like close that out, I think it's like back to a mentality thing of being an active participant in all of this. I think sometimes we can get lost in kind of our own interests or our own kind of goals and expectations again around what we want to do involving wildlife and wildlands. But if you kind of step back from that and see yourself as a participant in the whole thing, then you're going to see these other opportunities a lot easier, and being involved in those volunteer opportunities or going to those meetings or joining organizations is going to be kind of a natural progression in that. So I think that's kind of where I wanted to go with that, is just view it as a way to participate in your life and what you love to do.
Yeah, that's a great perspective and a great reminder to just become more educated on everything and so that you can be an advocate yourself. So thank you for that. That pretty much wraps up what we have. I know we're running pretty low on time, so I don't know. Thank you to all of the panelists. That was such a wonderful conversation. I feel like I came out of it with a lot of different perspectives and things to think about when recreating outdoors. I'll toss it back over to you, Catherine.
All right. Thanks, Lauren. And thanks, Justin and Elise, Landon, Josh, Dave. I think this is really useful and helpful information for our residents and our visitors as summer starts and we get reacquainted with our lands and our wildlife. This is your followers at home. This is our last chance for questions. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. And thank you for spending some of your weekend with us. While we're waiting for those questions, please bear with us for just a couple more minutes and a discount code from Onyx Hunt. First, we've dropped a link into the comments section for an evaluation. Folks, please just take a minute or two to fill that out. We want these to be useful, and this is a new way of doing things for us, and we'd appreciate your feedback. We will also mail you this really beautiful limited edition cutthroat trout and pronghorn sticker, enough for all in your family. So we would love to send those out to you. Thanks to our partners at Onyx Hunt. Next week, we'll email you a special discount code for 3 months free for completing the evaluation. And we have another code to start your summer off. If you'd like 20% off your subscription, enter the code WYLD, WYLD 20, and not only will you score 20% off, Onyx will send $5 to the Wildlife Fund, which is the fund that Josh mentioned earlier, and I think we can all attest to the usefulness of Onyx. So any more questions? Looks like we had folks joining from Maryland as well and around the country. Yes, JS Fishing, you do get the sticker by completing the evaluation and giving us your address. We promise we will not send you anything else but a sticker. So, all right. So again, Lauren, Justin, Elise, Landon, Josh, Dave, thank you very much for spending your part of your weekend with us. This concludes our 2021 Wyoming Outdoor Expo, and we're grateful for the thousands of people that have joined us over the last 3 days. Next year, we do plan to be back in person, May 5th through 7th at the Ford Wyoming Center in Casper. And to watch our previously recorded events, go to wyomingexpo.com and click on Expo Live, or check us out on YouTube and Facebook at the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Thank you, be well, and please keep this information in mind as you get outside this summer.